let's say there's men listening now and they want to get involved in this. What would be your advice to them? How can they get? What's the first step they need to take?
If they can get involved as a caregiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the first thing, of course, download PAL.
Uh-huh.
Second thing I think is just so in this situation, I would assume perhaps there's a woman who is more of the primary
Yeah.
caregiver. And then I would say to just have open conversations, make sure that you are informed of what are the care tasks that
Uh-huh.
need to be done, and just start picking out tasks one by one where you can contribute.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine if there's one person that has like the big oversight. It's
Mm-hmm.
fine if there's like a caregiver manager almost in the family, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fine if that person happens to be a woman. That doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're a man listening to this and you know that either your wife or sister or mother or daughter or someone or neighbor, like whoever that you want to help, if there's anyone out there and you feel like you are not contributing enough, uh, just sit down and just understand what they are doing and what they are doing as a caregiver, and just start picking out one thing. And you
And
can
all.
very easily do that in the
Yeah.
PAL app as well.
Yeah. Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk Jan Upkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech. Thank you for listening to episode 64. My uncle recently died and he spent his final days in a hospice to receive the palliative care that he needed. This may seem like a luxury to you, and it is, because only 14% of the people who need it receive adequate palliative care, even though the World Health Organization sees it as a basic human right. My guest today is Nara Moripen. She took her personal caregiving experience while caring for her mother as a starting point to build PAL. PAL is a startup that creates digital palliative care solutions for families affected by life-limiting diseases. In episode 64 of Women Disrupting Tech, Nara and I talk about building a solution that you hope is never needed. We discuss her personal caregiving experience that led to building PAL, innovating an essential but underdeveloped part of healthcare, and we talk about building and launching a digital platform in a way that less digitally savvy people can also use it. Plus, we'll learn what Nara and her team learned from launching their app. So, when you're ready to listen and learn how we can redefine palliative care with digital solutions, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech the CEO and co-founder of PAL, Nara Moripen. Hello, Nora. Good to have you. Question I always ask at the start is how you got into your current job or current position, and start wherever you want.
Yeah, hi. Really happy to be here. Yeah, I'll just dive right in. Maybe for context,
Yeah.
I'm Norwegian. Pretty much when I was done with high school, I moved abroad and I spent a few years in the UK and China studying before I eventually ended up settling down in Germany. My first or my only career before what I'm doing today was that I was a consultant working primarily in healthcare and life sciences for large pharma companies. I was primarily doing commercial strategies for them, and also started slowly but surely dabbling more and more into digital health as there was a lot of interest for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for quite a few years until I got to the manager stage. Then one summer, I went home to Norway to spend some time with my family, and my mom had been sick for a little bit, something she thought was a bit of a serious flu or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I took her to a doctor, and she was then very quickly sent to the hospital, where she was immediately put into a lot of tests, and quite quickly they found out that she had cancer.
Ooh.
And she didn't only have what I would call a normal curable cancer, she had terminal cancer, a very, very aggressive form. And essentially, we were told that there was very little that they could do. There was no form of curable treatment. She could maybe do some chemo and other things that would be more palliative in nature and that could maybe extend her life a little bit. But yeah, that was the message that we got.
That must have been
And
tough.
it was very tough, and it was quite shocking as well. My mom wasn't that old; she was in her early 60s. So it was definitely a shock for the whole family, and especially since you're kind of used to the whole notion of immediately getting some treatment and that
Yeah,
there's always something they can do.
yeah, yeah. And then to hear that it's terminal and that they cannot do anything. So the cancer had also spread throughout our body then.
Yes, exactly.
Ah.
It had spread everywhere. So we also then pretty much overnight we got a referral to our local palliative care team,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't realize it then, but now with the experience, when I reflect back on it, I couldn't be more grateful that we got such an early referral to the
Mm-hmm.
palliative care team.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of myths or misunderstandings about palliative care,
Mm-hmm.
which I also had at that point in time, where we were like, okay, but she's not dying right now. Why do we need to meet with the palliative care team? But really, what we realized is that they just focused on everything that would influence her and her quality of life and to make her more comfortable.
Yeah.
So that was great that we got that referral so soon.
Yeah. What was the most challenging part of this process?
So essentially, after she got her diagnosis, we sat down with her healthcare team, which now also consisted of the palliative care team, and we talked about my mom's wishes
Mm-hmm.
and us as a family as well. And the biggest wish she had was that she wanted to be at home
Uh-huh.
until the end, and this was also something that the healthcare team was very supportive of, and something that they hope to achieve for most of their patients. But we were also informed that, of course, that would require the support of us as family members.
Yeah.
And we, of course, also wanted to be there for my mom. I wanted to spend as much time as possible with her. So I kind of went back to Germany and packed up a few of my things and actually moved in with my mom for
Mm-hmm.
quite a few months there. Um, but what me and my sisters, as we were taking on the caregiving role, uh, despite our very best efforts and despite us Googling and despite us
Uh,
asking questions, we just didn't really have enough knowledge to actually know what to do. So my mom had as most people with terminal or life-limiting illness, they can
mm-hmm.
be very unpredictable. There's a lot of symptoms. There's a lot of needs they have when it comes to their care,
Mm-hmm.
food, like practical things, administration, but also just medical in nature.
Yeah.
And we really just didn't have any knowledge or information that could guide us. So we went on to make basically every mistake that you can make.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it got better, but really in the beginning it was very, very hard and
Yeah.
difficult to navigate.
Because you had help of a palliative care team, but they couldn't help in those cases, or what was there sort of how did that work?
Yeah, so the way that it works is that because we got the referral quite early,
Mm.
so from the moment my mom was diagnosed, it took over a year until she passed away, and it's not possible for the healthcare system to provide 24/7 care. It simply is
No,
not.
no,
So
yeah.
my mom was effectively like too healthy to get a lot of support, which was fine. We wanted to
Mm.
be at home and have life be as normal as possible. But because she couldn't get support all the time, even if we did have access to the palliative care team, it's not always easy for caregivers or patients to know when should we reach out to the healthcare team. Is this a symptom that I should just accept and live with, or is there something that should be done? And you also
Ah,
can't really call the healthcare team with questions about food, and when someone has trouble eating, you don't always know when to
yeah,
reach out. And all of these things can be quite detrimental for someone's
yeah,
comfort level, but we just didn't really know.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine. Later, after your mother died, you decided to start with Bell.
Yeah, it was.
How does that? How was that transition?
Yeah, it was. It took quite a bit of time. It wasn't like I kind of ended that caregiving experience thinking now I should do something about
Mm-hmm.
this. I think it took about a year, and then I met who is now my co-founder,
Yeah.
Asi. When I met her, we started talking about my experience,
Mm-hmm.
and she comes from more of a tech startup background. So she's worked for different tech startups that have really been, solving similar problems,
Uh-huh.
but definitely nothing in palliative care or healthcare. But it was just more her experience of knowing how to build something from the ground up in the tech space. We started talking about this, and with my experience as a caregiver, but also from digital health and her experience in tech,
Mm-hmm.
we sort of just decided like let's try and do something about this. And out of that, a very long done process of a few months, where we were then talking to other families and patients and healthcare experts like doctors and nurses, we
Mm-hmm.
eventually came up with what is now PAL.
Okay. So what does PAL do? Because you described, let's say, the issue you ran into
Mm,
yourself, like having to deal with a sick but not sick enough. Sorry to put it this crudely, but I
yeah.
can't think of a better way to say it. Person, and then having to second guess almost anything that is happening.
Mm.
Is that the part that PAL is solving for, or is it broader?
So PAL is a digital support tool that
Hmm.
can be introduced from the moment of a life-limiting illness, and it's
Yeah.
not only for cancer. There are
No.
many other conditions that also
Hmm.
require similar form of support that spans beyond medical,
Hmm.
but also just general care and emotional support and everything. So PAL really empowers family caregivers to be a
Yeah.
bit more active part of the healthcare team. So we
Hmm.
are partnering with medical professionals who are introducing PAL to their families,
Hmm.
and PAL really turns normal family members like myself
Hmm.
into more capable caregivers.
Yeah.
So it contains information that can help them tackle any caregiving challenge that they meet
Hmm.
based on what family members input into the app, whether that has to do with symptom logging or something that affects their loved one's well-being, or if it's a
Hmm.
care-related event. The app gives them access to practical tips and knowledge and other information that can help them both take more action
Hmm.
and perform care-related tasks. And it also helps by providing all of this information to the individual's healthcare team, so that they can see all the observations and they can intervene when it's
Uh-huh.
necessary. Yeah,
Okay, so the let's say the team that you were working with could have seen what was happening and then put in a call like, "Hey, change this or add that."
exactly. Yeah.
Ah, this is especially meant for caregiving at home, right? So this is not your hospice type of app that you serve with, that you help volunteers in hospices.
Exactly. Yeah. So hospices are the hospice care typically is introduced when individuals are in their end of life phase, which is typically when luckily you have way more access to support, and that is also something that the family needs. So
Hmm.
we are more helping in the home care situations where the family members are still. Quite often very active, and typically there's not hospice support at that
Uh,
point because it's so much earlier. Yeah.
does it also, let's say, extend the period that people can stay at home?
That is the idea, yes.
Okay.
So the problem today with palliative care specifically, or essentially when someone has a life limiting illness,
Mm-hmm.
is that so many things happen overnight, or there are emergencies or complications that are appearing
Mm-hmm.
seemingly out of nowhere. A person's condition can change very, very rapidly,
Mm-hmm.
and also a new symptom can appear. So things are happening very, very quickly. And that is the number one reason why so many of these patients end up in the hospital. Because of course, when there's a health emergency, they need to get proper
Uh-huh.
support,
Yeah.
and they're often not seen by a nurse or doctor daily, of course.
Yeah.
So the idea behind PAL is that if we can help these family members both know more what to do in a certain percentage
Mm-hmm.
of care situations where they are capable and can take action to help,
Yeah.
but then we also make it easier for the healthcare team to intervene earlier.
Yeah.
It does mean that we can keep patients at home longer or even
Yeah.
until the end of their life if they wish so,
Mm-hmm.
and just be able to prevent more complications and more emergencies and avoid hospitalization in many cases.
Okay, and in that sense, it's taking pressure off the healthcare system as a whole, and also saving cost, I would assume.
Exactly, yeah. And that is again a massive problem, as I'm sure you're well aware,
Yeah.
not only in the Netherlands, but in other countries, that
Mm-hmm.
healthcare systems are so overwhelmed
Yeah.
absolutely everywhere. Also, access to home care. It's difficult to get a spot in a hospice.
Mm-hmm.
Hospitals often don't have free beds. So all of these are really things that it can really be beneficial if family members like myself, who are already there and want to make a difference, if we can just give them the tools. So I wasted so much time just not knowing what to do or
Yeah.
not feeling confident about where to find the information or wasting my time on Google. And all of that time I could have spent actually providing proper care for my mom, which
Yeah.
would have helped. Mm,
And prevented hospitalizations and
exactly.
all kinds
Yeah.
of complications that you don't want.
Yeah.
Palliative care is I think, highly personal. As you pointed out, you were taking care of your mother together with your sister. So, do I understand correctly that the digital layer is not to replace that part, but to sort of add to that?
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Okay.
more complementary in nature.
Yeah.
There's I don't believe that technology will in any way be able to
Hmm.
replace that human layer that is needed in care, whether that is from a family member or a loved one, or more
Yeah.
importantly,
Mm.
perhaps from the healthcare team. But what we do see, of course, is that there's a lot of like inefficient practices as a result of many different factors.
Hmm.
But PAL simply just helps making people more efficient and more knowledgeable and
Yeah.
just have more insight into what is happening so that they can all focus on what really matters, which is to provide more human and personal care.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, part of your user base will be a bit older. I think you were quite young, so and digitally savvy. How do you help people who are less technologically advanced than you and maybe I? How do you help them also use your app?
So in terms of the especially the individuals who are sick,
Hmm.
there is a space for them to be on PAL as well. So we actually have quite a few people who are sick. They are actually also very active on the app and are inviting their family members,
Hmm.
but still taking more of an active part in their own care.
Hmm.
That of course is different from family to family, and sometimes you don't want to, or you're too sick, or maybe you just aren't digitally savvy enough to
Yeah.
use it. Since we are primarily targeting the family caregivers, um, they tend to be slightly younger than what you would consider the threshold
Yeah.
for digital savviness. So far that has not been a problem. The app is simple to use. We've done a lot of usability testing.
Hmm.
So far we've received very good feedback on that. But of course, whether someone who is absolutely not well versed with smartphones at all can use it, that's of course a different story. And I'm sure that in the future we will add some additional services so that we can also help those individuals.
Yeah. Is there, by the way, any AI involved? So
Uh,
artificial intelligence?
Yeah, AI is not that it's not an AI offering, but of course we are using AI for
Hmm.
multiple things, and we do have a lot of algorithms in the app that are really helping people save time and that are really giving recommendations based on their activity on the app and what they need, and that is something that we are doubling down on
Hmm.
moving forward to just make the app more intelligent and really help people know more. Yeah, anything that they need the app for, that they can very quickly access the right information and the right support from them, like in the moment that they need it.
Yeah. Okay. So you launched an app, and I was wondering about two things. One is basically what was your experience launching it? How did
Mm.
that go in terms of what did you have to do? Can you take us through the steps? And the second question, you initially, I think, target caregivers, although there's also, as you said, also a space for people who actually are undergoing the care. Why first the caregivers and not other parts of the ecosystem?
Yeah. I'll start with like the app development process, which
Mm,
a launch is just a moment in time, but for
yeah.
sure it was a quite lengthy process to get there. And I think we really just divided up that whole app development process into very like small chunks. So
Mm-hmm.
we started out being a team with no developers. Now, of course, we have developers, but we really wanted to test and launch something very very quickly. So
Yeah.
actually, in the beginning, after we had done some testing of some sketches we had made,
Mm-hmm.
we involved users or potential users from like day one with designing the app. And we've had a lot of iterations involving them. But our first app that we launched was actually a no-code app,
Mm-hmm.
which my co-founder Asi designed and built from scratch. And it was just a quite simple version of what we have today, but it was enough to have actual users tested, and we got a lot of feedback, and we could then just validate that the idea was good and that it was needed and that it was working.
Yeah.
That is something I think we launched probably a year before the actual app launch, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
9 months or something. It was quite early on that we did that. And based on that initial feedback, we raised some funds,
Mm-hmm.
and we hired some developers, and then we launched. But what has really been common throughout that whole development and build process has just been the involvement of a very broad group of people, both patients and family caregivers, and also clinicians
Mm-hmm.
that have constantly been testing the app and giving feedback. And that is something that we're of course still doing now, as we're obviously still launching new features and
Mm-hmm.
improving the product weekly.
How do you involve clinicians in this process?
Many different ways. So anything from having sessions where we walk them through the app and get their feedback, to just
Mm,
them testing it themselves, to them sharing it with their patients and families. Yeah, there's so many different ways that we are
uh-huh.
involving them. Yeah,
You have
we also. Mm.
Did you experience any issues accessing, especially the clinician side of this?
It can be. It's not like there's like this, amazing website where you go
Uh,
and just pick out clinicians. So it
yeah,
is, of
no.
course, a bit of trial and error. But so far, it's been working well with the combination of just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, getting introductions from our network, and then getting introductions from the clinicians we meet this way. And that is kind of how we've been doing it. That being said, we are always looking for more feedback and more testers and more people who have ideas. So, if anyone here is listening to this and they either are a healthcare professional, or, they are a caregiver themselves, perhaps, or a care receiver, we're always looking to speak with people and hear their thoughts. I think
Okay.
that's just really at the core of what we need to do to make sure that we build something that's like very user friendly and just fits their needs.
Yeah, so really keep listening to the voice of the customer, and the customer in this case can be various different groups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay. And of course, we'll put your email and LinkedIn in the show notes, so
perfect.
people can connect there.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think you had a second question to
yeah,
the question.
which I totally forgot because it slipped my mind.
It was
Uh,
um, it was about who we are targeting as
oh
a
yeah,
customer.
you're targeting. Indeed, thanks for reminding me, and I will not cut this out of the. Um, you're targeting caregivers first initially as an initial target group. Why was that?
So the app itself is built for caregivers. So
Yeah.
it's very user friendly for them. It was built with them in mind.
Mm-hmm.
We have since then added to it with more interfaces for clinicians. So reports where they can see all the information that is logged. And we will also very soon be launching more of an interface for them where they can access all of the data and the real time observations. But even if the service or the solution is targeted at family caregivers and for them to be upskilled,
Mm-hmm.
we are actually going to healthcare providers and also insurance companies and working with them so that they can offer it as an extra or like an additional service layer
Yeah.
to their patients and families. And that is because even if the family members, of course, benefit from knowing what to do and helping their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Really, where the biggest benefits can be are, of course, when it comes to the actual healthcare provider, because they can really save time. And we talked about earlier all of these complications and emergencies that they can just have more insight into being able to intervene earlier. So that is of course our focus in terms of where who we are working with to also introduce this to these families that need it.
Is it your experience that caregivers are mostly women?
There's for sure like an overweight of women.
Mm-hmm.
The what we see, because on the app you can have as many caregivers as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So we do of course have larger care teams that have men, and we of course also have care teams that only consist of men as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know from research and also from a lot of the interactions we've had with caregivers that there is a majority of caregivers that are women, and I think that is just a reflection on our society and how things are in terms of who are mostly picking up caregiving responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And we are really working on ways to make sure that everyone can be involved. Because I don't think that men are not caregivers because they don't want to or don't have time. I think it's just been a bit difficult for multiple caregivers to collaborate. And I saw that in my own family as well. It wasn't always that easy making sure that we had an equal distribution of caregiving tasks,
Yeah.
and we were all women. So I think that's just like something that is a challenge and something that we're working on, because it is a lot easier for these families when everyone can be informed. Everyone feels like they actually have access to information where they can become more of a skilled caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can just help each other. And it also makes it easier to see which of these caregivers actually are carrying a lot of the care burden in this
Mm-hmm.
case, and it just makes it a bit easier for other caregivers to get involved as well.
Let's say there's men listening now and they want to get involved in this. What would be your advice to them? How can they get? What's the first step they need to take?
If they can get involved as a caregiver,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think the first thing, of course, download PAL.
Uh-huh.
Second thing I think is just so in this situation I would assume perhaps there's a woman who is more of the primary
Yeah.
caregiver. And then I would say to just have open conversations, make sure that you are informed of what are the care tasks that
Uh-huh.
need to be done, and just start picking out tasks one by one where you can contribute.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine if there's one person that has like the big oversight. It's
Mm-hmm.
fine if there's like a caregiver manager almost in the family, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fine if that person happens to be a woman. That doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're a man listening to this and you know that either your wife or sister or mother or daughter or someone or neighbor, like whoever that you want to help, if there's anyone out there and you feel like you are not contributing enough, uh, just sit down and just understand what they are doing and what they are doing as a caregiver, and just start picking out one thing. And you
And
can
all.
very easily do that in the
Yeah.
PAL app as well.
Yeah. And also understand what they're struggling with, and that may be easier for you to deal with because
Yeah, people have different strengths
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
exactly. Um, So we talked about the problem that you're solving. We talked about PAL as a solution, more the what men also can do in terms of picking up care tasks. What kind of future developments are you looking forward to for PAL, but also maybe in a broader scheme of things?
Yeah. So we have we have some very exciting developments going, which I'm not sure how much I can share. But I think that we touched upon it a little bit in terms of making the application smarter with the use of AI, and really just make it a more helpful tool in daily practice of
Yeah.
clinicians, because that is the key
Hmm.
to getting more help to these families,
Hmm.
is that we need to get clinicians even more involved and even just more insightful in terms of knowing exactly what is going on with any one family, but of course without overloading them with information because they already have a lot on their plate.
Yeah.
So that is like quite high level what we're working on at the moment.
Really
Um, yeah,
tailoring the bits of
making it more
information.
suitable for
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone's yeah, just daily life and practice.
Okay. Cool. Do you plan to broaden the scope of from because you're now focusing on palliative care, maybe also broader to care as a whole?
Yeah, so essentially, when it comes to palliative care, it's a bit of a misunderstood practice because
Ah.
now it's mostly offered to people who have a terminal illness,
Mm-hmm.
but palliative care just means that it's someone, it's a care profession or a care medical care philosophy where you're
Mm-hmm.
focusing more than just medical aspects. You're focusing on the medical, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
and the practical as well. And that is something that is needed across all illnesses, of course, but
Yeah.
not only when it comes to terminal illness, also when it comes to long-term chronic illness, when it comes to life-limiting illness where individuals are living a long time, like with dementia and Alzheimer's, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Yeah.
All of these aspects, they still need to keep an eye out for symptoms. There are still huge challenges for family members in terms of
Yeah.
their care burden. There's practical and physical challenges that are appearing. And for all of these conditions, palliative care can really help. But the problem today is that healthcare systems do not have the capacity to help them and offer them palliative care
Yeah.
because there aren't enough care providers and care professionals. So this is really where we hope that we can go with PAL eventually, that this is something that can enable people to access just light touch palliative care early,
Yeah.
and we can then catch the signals as early as possible for when they actually need help from healthcare professionals.
Yeah. But also then what I'm hearing you say is that you want to broaden it out of the, let's say, the terminal diseases space into more broadly chronic
Yeah, over
diseases
time, yes.
and
Yeah,
that just take longer, because I
right.
do recognize, especially with people with Parkinson's, with dementia, they run into a lot of comorbidities, as it's called.
Yeah.
Things that happen sort of, and even people with like high blood pressure, they need extra care on other
Mm,
fronts as well. And then I think it can play your app can for sure play a role in helping them deal with it, but also
mm,
helping people who take care of them deal with it.
yeah.
So in the Dutch, I will assist, or in the Dutch constellation, then I would also see a space for you in the thuiszorg, so in the home care. Is that something you're contemplating, or is not actively
Yeah,
on your
I think
radar?
so because also in the home care setting, of course, family members also play a role, and also not only family members, but there are also wide variety of caregivers, also professional caregivers.
Hmm.
And sometimes you just don't always have access to all the same information.
Yeah,
Sometimes you do need a bit of that additional support and insight into what is really going on. So there's a lot of ways that technology like this
yeah,
can aid these family and professional caregivers in the home setting.
yeah.
Yeah,
Especially to when you can facilitate communication between the two parties.
yeah,
I think that's basically where most of the issues are. Let's
yes,
say.
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to move towards the end. I have an arrangement with Jacqueline van den Ende. She's one of the co-founders of Carbon Equity, and they help wealthy individuals invest in a better climate. She gave me the task to make this podcast obsolete in just over 8 years from now. And I was wondering if you had any advice on to how to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that that objective. By the way,
Mm,
that's great. Um, I think the main thing that I would say, and it's a very high level advice, but I would just say to just like keep your confidence. So I think that there's a lot of we're a bit in this echo chamber where there's a lot of negative information and negative statistics when it comes to women in tech or women in startups and women
mm,
in fundraising and
yeah.
women in childcare and when you get pregnant and your career stagnates, like all of these aspects.
Uh-huh.
And I think that all of these are just averages, and it has nothing to do with you as an individual, you who are listening to this. I think that everyone out there can really make something amazing. But the one thing that you just need to keep is your confidence.
Yeah.
When everyone else or everything else is telling you that you can't do it, you just have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
That's a wonderful place to wrap. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed our conversation. Last question, Nora. If people want to learn more about you or about Bell, or maybe become one of the testers or users, where would you like to send them?
Yeah, so I'm very accessible on LinkedIn. So I think you said you could drop me there, but just
Yeah.
search up Nara Moripen on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find me. And then you can also maybe add my email, nara@palahelps.com.
Yeah.
Uh, Really excited to hear from anyone who wants to either get involved or just have a chat in general.
Okay. Well, Nara Moripen, thank you very much for the wonderful conversation. Really enjoyed it. Listeners, thanks very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to episode 64 of Women Disrupting Tech with Nara Moripen on redefining palliative care with Pal. Nara and I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. Special thanks to Kasia Pokrop for connecting us. If you'd like to learn more about Nara and Pel, feel free to connect with her via the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog. On the same website, you can also become a member of the Women Disrupting Tech community. Members get early access to new episodes, and in the weekly newsletter, I'll share with you what I learned from each of the episodes. Plus, you'll be the first to hear when new blog posts about women who built the internet come online. So check out the show notes for a link. When you're looking for a role model to inspire your own hero's journey in tech, I invite you to check out one of the other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And if you're a regular listener, please give the show a rating or a review because that way you help other people discover the podcast. If you're a male ally and you want to help the Women Disrupting Tech make this podcast obsolete by the end of 2032, there's a simple thing you can do. Please share the podcast with friends, family, and coworkers because this way you give my guests a platform they need to make it happen. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can reach me via Dirkjan at womendisruptingtech.blog, or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, simply type in my name and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, keep being awesome.